One thing that did come up, mostly, I mean, I'll be honest with you, I had a really hard read on how people actually how much people actually cared about the Switch 2 because so much of the discussion was around pricing and tariffs. Um, Obviously the tariff conversation has been all over the place, and I don't really like everyone's gonna sit there and tell you what they think about tariffs. Um, I I just don't really know what to say about it. I think what I really saw from a lot of the discussions around pricing stuff is, it's a high price system, but at the same time, we're looking at a time when video games don't really drop in price, right? For whatever reason, whether it be due to inflation and things like that, right? That, there's just a lot less wiggle room on dropping price to drive revenue, it seems like, unless you're on PC doing digital only, right? That kind of thing. So, that being said, and saying that, there are plenty of ways to play video games on an affordable level or on devices you already have. So I'm not saying that video games are too expensive, but the Switch 2 is obviously, within a space, especially in the launch year, where the people who really care are the one who are going to be buying this thing, and probably at pretty much any price you're going to do. I maybe have said that same thing about the 3DS though, and clearly there's a problem there with 3DS, right? So I don't want to sit there and be definitive on that. When it comes to tariffs, everyone's gonna have their own explanation of how tariffs work. I feel like with tariffs, it's basically just a tariff good or tariff bad logic battle that happens. And then so what happens is basically whatever best aligns with my reality is what happens with tariffs. I thought this was a really good article from GameSpot. It's not really relevant anymore. But, when people were asking, how are tariffs going to affect the Switch, I thought this was a really good collection of people. These are the right people to ask about this. Daniel Ahmad, Matt Piscatella, people at these industry analysts, been in the industry for decades. But even in this article, they're just we don't know what's going to happen. Here's my idea. All anyone at this point can do is speculate, says Matt. So and that's really what happened. And I think even Daniel, after this article was up for a day or two, he's like, "Man, that article aged very poorly," because people can only guess, right? And I think it's just what you're getting here. I think is just here are the best people to try to make predictions, right? And at the end of the day, no one's a fortune teller, right? And I think a lot of times, I think what happens with people in these roles and people who want to undermine people in these roles is it's people view these as people that are people view them as people who are saying facts, when I think the way they should be viewed is here are the people who best understand this segment of the market. That doesn't mean they know everything. It just means that they best understand this space. And I can't predict everything at the same time, right? And that's, I think, part of it. How do we best understand the world, basically? So, but I think the problem with the tariff discussion is that it goes well beyond anything to do with Nintendo or the pricing or whether tariff good or bad. It is where are you emotionally, in terms of where there are much deeper wounds, I guess, that go beyond all this stuff. And so where you're feeling emotionally about the world and the state of the world is going to change how you feel about what this is. I had a really hard conversation with one guy that was just he was calling Nintendo stupid because he was how could they not have predicted the tariffs? And it's just I'm trying to tell him just well, put tariffs good or bad aside. Here's what was generally expected by the market, and here's what actually happened. And he just could not fathom this gap. And I think it's just, when it comes down to it, it's if you think the tariffs are good for a legitimate reason, then you are going to have this belief that it is the reasonable thing to do this, right? Where if you're on the other side of it, it's not going to be reasonable looking, right? And I think the thing that I kind of run into is if you ever if you have somebody who's very emotional about something, and you're in a situation that's an emotionally thing, and that's not saying emotional in the sense that I'm the one being above this here because I'm not emotional, right? We're all emotionally connected to these things in different ways, right? Everyone has these emotional connections, and I think a lot of times what you need to do first before you have any discussion of logic or statistics or anything like that is, where is this person emotionally at right now, right? And I think once you can do that, you can start having a discussion about like what these individual things mean. But if somebody's in a mindset where just like they are in this particular mindset about how these things work, tariff good or tariff bad, there's no way you can logic them out of that hole, right? And then so things that are just like raw facts start meaning different things to them, right? And then they just don't understand how other people see it other ways. I think that is like a lot of it. So I think I said it already, but like these are cuts that go deeper than tariffs. Tariffs are just the surface level of what's happening with that. Obviously, that's not saying that this doesn't have an impact. I would get into it. You already know. You fucking know if you're looking into the stuff. like it's not my. I'm not here to tell you anything about all that stuff. How to feel about it, good or bad. That's just not what I'm trying to do. I know if you know me personally, you know how I feel about it. So I'm not. But I think what I'm just trying to say is very neutrally in this situation. I'm not trying to very specifically point to any specific thing right now. But I do have my own feelings on it. But I just don't think that's very valuable to talk about here. Because, again, everybody wants to tell you how they think it works. And we're already, like, the conversation moves so fast as well. We're so far beyond it. I thought about maybe I shouldn't talk about this. But I think what I was looking at more than anything was just like, how are people interacting with each other about this topic? Not about the topic itself, because I feel like the topic itself was just, there's just so much information being thrown around and everybody wanted to prove a point, right? So, anyways. You guys want to talk about a video game though? Switch for $450. whatever you believe. Switch $450 right now, it sounds like. So that is what you get.